there. I did kind of come up with a thing here. There we go. Can you guys still see me and hear me and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yep.
All right. Angular signals. I went to NGConf just a few weeks ago, and it was great. There were a lot of um, valuable lessons and new things that they talked about. But the main thing, the biggest thing that everybody was talking about was Angular signals. It is going to take over Angular. So I decided to just talk about that. Um, First thing first, what are signals? We're going to talk about setting and reading signals, the difference between writable and computed signals, and lastly, we're going to talk about effects. Also, you can look at my awesome pictures there at the top. They came from PowerPoint. Um, okay, so what are signals? If you've used React before, you know pretty much what signals are. They are basically hooks. A little bit different, but in the general sense, think of it as a use state or a use effect. So basically, they're a new way for Angular to keep track of values. Um, the signals can contain any value from simple primitives to complex data structures. You can have arrays in there, you can have objects on there, or you can just have a 0 or a 1. So setting and getting. To set a signal, there are a few different ways. For getting them, it's pretty simple. You just call it. Like you see here on the right, it just says count, boom, and you get whatever the count is. For setting, though, you need to create a signal. So you say, const count equals signal, and then you pass in whatever value. This is the initial value. In React, this is where you would do use state, and then you pass in whatever the initial value is. But once you've created it, you can set it in different ways. You can just change it completely to something else. You can do count that set 3 or count that set and pass an object or an array or whatever you want. And you're basically changing the signal to be whatever else you want. You can also update it. So say, for example, with a counter, right? You need to know what the current count is to know what it should be if you're updating it by 1. So that's where the update comes in. So when you count that update, you can see that you get the value of the current value, and then you can do whatever you want with it, and returns the new value that you have, and that gets set as the new value of the signal. So that's where you can see there value equal, goes to value plus 1. You can get a lot fancier with this as well, but this is just a very simple example of that. And let's see, there's other ways to do it too. There's mutate. Mutate is actually pretty cool. Say you have an array, and this array, like here, you set signal and you set an array, right? It has multiple things on there. And say you want to change this done false equals to true, but you don't want to change the whole array. You don't want to grab the array, change the thing, and then go and set it again. Sure, you can do that, but it seems kind of like a waste of resources, and there's a better way. So that's where mutate comes in, where it also gives you the current value of it, but this time you're not actually returning a new value. You are just doing something with the current value that it is in. So as you can see here, you're just grabbing the first value of it, and you're changing that property to true, and that's it. There's no returns, there's no anything. It's just when you're done, and the value in that signal has been mutated. So those 3 ways of setting a value in signal. Next, there are 2 different types of signals. There's a writable and a computed. So writable is everything we just talked about, right? You just go in there and you set, update or mutate. But for computed signals, you basically, what you're doing is you're using another writable signal as a dependency for this new signal that you're writing. If you can see here on the right side, you have a count that you created. That's a writable signal. You can change that, you can update it, you can mutate it. But then let's create a double count. This double count is computed. And so you just call computed and tell it, hey, count times 2. So now double count is a signal, and it depends on count. So whatever count is, you're times thinking by 2, and boom, you have double count. Um, so that's cool because you can do it with multiple things. So you can have multiple signals on there. It just would have multiple dependencies. Um, so computer signals, though, are read-only, which means you can't go in there and do double count, that mutate and change it, or that update, or that set. It's once you created it, that's what it is, right? Because if not, I think it would be way too much of a pain for Angular to keep track of things. So right now, it's just depending on the count. Computed signals are lazily evaluated and memoized. What does this mean? Lazily evaluated means that in this example, where we created a double count and we passed in a function that does something, that function is not being run right now. That function is only going to be run whenever we call double count somewhere. If we try to read from double count, then it will go and run this function. So that's why it's lazily evaluated. So it's pretty inexpensive to use. And it's also memoized, which means memoized is a fancy way of saying caching, right? So it'll cache the return of this function, basically the value of double count. And the next time you call it, it will just give you that cache value, unless one of its dependencies, in this case count, have changed before you make that other call. So if that has changed, then it tells double count, sets a flag saying, hey, you actually do need to reevaluate this. But if not, it'll just use the memoized version of it. So there's that. And I also want to talk about effects. So they are similar to React's use effect, but not completely. Even the syntax is similar as well. But the signal effects are asynchronous, and that means if you need synchronous code, then don't rely on this. It tracks dependencies automatically, and it destroys itself automatically. There are ways to override that if you want, but out of the box, it's basically on rails, right? It just kind of, you don't have to do much to it, which is nice. But if you do want to go and give it more advanced or more details, things of what you wanted to do, then there are ways to do that. In comparison with React's use effect, where you have to actually pass in a dependency array, and then there's, you can pass in a function as well for destroying stuff. This one seems a little bit easier to use. Also, they don't, by default, they are blocking you from using other signals inside of it, although there is a way to bypass that. And they're doing that because it's usually not a good idea to do that inside of an effect. It's also not a good idea inside of React, but React just lets you do it. So React is in comparison, is a little bit more free. You can kind of do whatever you want. Angular kind of keeps you more constrained, but gives you the option to move out of it and do more things if you understand it and know the repercussions for doing so. So here on the right, I have some examples of, for example, we have an effect, simple effect here at the top, where all it does is it just tells you what the current count is, and that count is a signal, right? When I said signal is, I meant set signals. So you can read signals. You just can't set them right there. And what was I going to say with that? Okay, yeah. So that's a simple way of doing that, right? Like you just, and effects will run once, at least once. In React, you can do different things where you can say, hey, it'll run every time this changes, and this will also do that depending on its dependencies. But you're guaranteed that this will run once at least. Now, if you want to change your dependency list, if you have something on there that you don't want it to be tracked, you don't want it to rerun the effect if something is, if they say the counter in this example changes, you just want it to run once, then you have the untracked. So if you set something as untracked, then it will use it the one time when you call it, but then if counter ever changes, that signal changes, this effect will not be affected. Well, it will it will just do it the one time. It'll only change if current user changes. So that's what untracked is for. Then also, I was talking about how you can, this destroys automatically, but you can override that by passing in an on cleanup. And then at the end of your effect, you call on cleanup with whatever your cleanup function should be. And it'll just run that at the end and clean up, destroy your effect. So there's that with that. And then, so in summary, with all those things, Angular signals are new and awesome, and they're a very easy way to manage simple state, right? If you have an array or uh, objects or primitives, anything like that, it is very good for that. Keep in mind though that it is still in developer preview, but don't let that stop you from learning it because it is here to stay. Based on what I saw at the conference, where they actually had actual Angular developers from Google there, this is the future of Angular. This is where they're excited about it, and this is where things are heading. They know that people are not super happy with RxJS. RxJS is super powerful, but it's also very difficult for a lot of people to understand and to use. So they're kind of moving in this direction. RxJS still has its place. Don't get me wrong; it'll still be used at least for the next little while. But they're trying to make things easier, and so that they get more developers using Angular. So yeah, it's very awesome. You should look at it. Are there any questions that anybody has? Anybody?
Yeah, Fernando.
Yeah.
So currently when you do an HTTP call, that's going to still be an RxJS observable. Have you found a
Yes.
good way to change that to a symbol, or is that not a good idea?
Probably not a good idea right
Signal.
now. For right now, the way I'm seeing it is just state, right? You have your any kind of property. Think about it like if you've done React, just a use state and a use effect, right? Use state and use effect are probably the biggest ones, the biggest hooks that are used in React, right? There's a bunch of others, but those are the ones, and that's kind of what Angular is moving towards. So I'm sure they'll add more things to signals, right? Still in preview, so there's a lot more things that they can add and do to it. But yeah. And Jen, I apologize. When I ran through this, it was a lot longer, but maybe I think I spoke too fast. Anybody else have any other questions?
Is there any indication when this might be released?
Soon, very soon. It's in preview right now, so I'm guessing in the next major release, it's going to be there.
Yeah, I might like to try it out and use it. It might be good to use in some small cases in the project that I'm working on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, me looking at it, I hadn't touched Angular in a few years actually before I went to this conference, but then I had the chance to go, and I used to be mainly an Angular developer, so I decided, hey, let's go, let's see what's new. And when I saw this, and everybody was super excited about it, the whole Angular team was super excited about it. And it's very mature already. Still in preview, but very mature. So I would assume that not much of it might change, right? They always say in preview things could change, but I doubt that anything would change dramatically. And it's coming very, very soon. So yeah.
So Fernando, I think it is out. I'm just on Angular 16 and I'm using signals.
Yeah, well, let's see. When I looked it through, they said it was still in preview when I was in the conference, but it might have already come out then too.
Yeah,
On the official Angular site, this does stay still in preview, but maybe it already came out, and I don't know about it. But yeah. Let me see. Actually, if I go back to developer preview, might be that you can still use it. Yeah. Yeah. It's something. It deals with their normal deprecation policy stuff. So I don't really know exactly what they mean by that. But yes, you can go ahead and use it. It's good. So yeah.
Yeah, I noticed on the Angular's IO site, it does have a big banner that says they're available for developer preview. So at least according to their docs, that hasn't changed. But that's
Yeah.
exciting that they're out there and that we can actually use it with the current version.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot more that I didn't touch on because I didn't think it was going to go that fast. But if you go into the docs, there's actually a lot that it'll talk about a little bit more. And yeah, there's also some videos. I can probably send some videos, some links out to everybody that's interested that talk about signals and what they can do and stuff. So yeah. Anything else? Jen, anything from you?
No, just thanks. And if you read the comment from Aaron in the chat, he said, regarding the link to your presentation, I think shorter is always better. I think considering the topic you presented, the time was perfect. So
Oh, well, thank you, Aaron. No, seriously, I think I got nervous and started talking fast. So,
that's great.
okay. So, yeah, this is my first brown bag, so I don't know what comes next, Jen. It's on you.
Okay, well, I'm just going to stop the recording.